This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, before we launch today's conversation on voter suppression, we really need to take a moment to thank each and every one of our listeners. Thank you for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your comments, especially on episode number 5. Should Black people trust medical trials? Irene, we stimulated a lot of dialogue with that.
Yes, we did. And a tsunami of thanks for trusting our voice in that discussion, hopefully informing you whether you will or will not engage in these trials. But the one thing we left you with is consent. So we're very happy that we saw a lot of folks talking about this particular episode.
We also thank our amazing producers for their fine work in helping to stir up good trouble. Kyla, Wright, and Kavontae Smalls.
Yeah.
For days and weeks now, we have been seeing social media posts and news stories of 11 hours in line to vote in parts of Georgia, quarter-mile lines in Ohio, accusations that mail-in ballots have been dumped in ditches or are missing. We have heard calls for the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. We have seen voter intimidation at polling places. Irene, what in the hell is going on?
Well, one of the things that we understand is this, that the party that controls the ballot controls the country. And if our vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try to suppress it as much as they do.
So we have to go from the mantra of Black Lives Matter to now Black votes matter. Is that what you're saying?
Not only that, and our concerns with those votes.
Wow. I mean, I'm looking at Florida, where we have a poll tax where folks who are former felons can now vote, even though they couldn't before, but they have to pay all of their past fines and fees in order to vote.
The absurdity.
I mean, and we have former presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg, who's attempting to try to help and do the right thing by he's donating $5 million to assist with about 5,000 former felons. But this is so wrong, and it seems to be okay for certain people.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, we got to understand this, that the voter suppression tactics, like dividing minority districts, the poll taxes, the literacy tests, changing polling hours are all part and parcel of disenfranchising Black American votes, LGBT votes, Latinx votes, because one of the things, it's particularly important in this era, because we talked about long before we got to 2020, the browning of America. And if you give us the vote, we're going to vote for the party that upholds our concerns.
So in this season, 2020, we have to stand up and we have to vote. I mean, but this is so insane that you have places like Iowa, Kentucky, and Virginia, where if you were a felon, you can't vote at all, ever, for life. And then places in Maine and Vermont, where if you are a felon, you can still vote. I mean, it almost is a reprise of Jim Crow laws that were set up to suppress poor and people of color, Black people especially, with poll taxes, literacy taxes, and these grandfather clauses.
Yeah, it so reminded me, when you talk about that, it reminded me of this scene in Selma, where Oprah plays Annie Lee Cooper, and this woman passes the literacy test with flying colors. And then the guy the place where she went to register to vote, the guy comes out, the white racist comes out with a jar of jelly beans. Now you would think, just out of a sense of his own self-respect and dignity, he wouldn't come out with something as absurd, but placed it in front of her and asked her how many jelly beans are in there. So again, that, the way in which voter suppression operates, it's no rhyme or reason. It's just part and parcel, by any means necessary, to disenfranchise the very group of people that would switch the government that we now have to include their voices.
So the fear of Black people lifting our voices. Now check this out. Remember, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony of what? Of
liberty. Right.
So we're lifting our voices with a desire to see liberty and justice for all. And the fear of us lifting our voices creates a sense where we legalize or they legalize
Yeah.
suppressive tactics so that we can't lift our voices.
But you know what though? So and let's understand contextually how we are lifting our voices. We have always lifted our voices in the midst of a struggle. So
Yeah,
where are we now? We're in a pandemic.
yeah.
People will rise in spite of the fact an existential threat not only to this democracy but also to their lives
Mm,
to cast their ballot because casting your ballot says not only do your vote matter, I matter and I am a first class citizen,
yeah.
not a third class citizen, but a first class citizen.
And so we have had to put our lives on the line going back to the very beginning of this nation. The whole three-fifths compromise, right? The fact that they wanted our body in order to make a count in terms of how many congressional delegates they can get, but they wouldn't allow our voices. Like
Right,
the
right,
only people who had voice back then who
right.
were white male land owning
Owning slave owners. Slave,
slave. Yeah, I
let's
mean,
just be honest. So that three-fifth compromise, it's so problematic. It was part of the Constitution in 1787. The
mhm,
problem with that is this: 1776, the American Revolution, supposedly giving America,
yeah.
okay, America freedom. So when we talk about when that Constitution, that preamble says we the people, I am who the people, okay, because who the people,
who
because
that?
who that? That's right. Who the people? But the point is, we are the people because the
Yeah,
whole idea of the three-fifth compromise was to dovetail the electoral college, which
yeah.
also disenfranchised black and brown people. One of the things that we understand is that the popular ballot, I mean, the popular vote doesn't give you the election. We
Mm,
saw that in 2004 with Baby Bush.
mhm,
Okay. We
mhm,
saw that. Okay. Because again, this is another sort of voter suppression. Hanging chads.
mhm,
Where? In a predominantly black Broward County
mhm.
in Florida. Again, then we get 2016. Hillary wins the popular vote. What happens? Again, we have voter suppression operating. And so, one of the things that we learn from this here is that if we come out in huge numbers,
Yeah.
that all of their tactics, we can upend them by virtue of coming so resoundingly making our voice clear that we want a change in government that includes our voices. So that's why our vote is important.
Yeah, because I have not seen these suppressive tactics in places other than where people of color live, where black people live, where indigenous people live, where LGBTQ communities are existing. And it seems to me that it is so clear that this is an attack on the we, the people, who is
We the people.
inclusive, you know?
Okay,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I mean,
Absolutely. And I think the thing that gets me this is that when we think of voter suppression, we only think it as the province of the South. But
mm,
as I say, when we talk about that Mason-Dixon line, if you below it, it's down South. If you above it, it is up South. I'm in the bastion of liberalism, the People's Republic of Cambridge. So you won't see black water fountains and black toilets, but we do it by virtue of squares, Harvard Square versus every other square, or the zip code 02138. That's what brought about the arrest of Henry Louis Gates. He wasn't in his colored
mm.
designated zone. So again, various ways in which we do voter suppression is that when you have a minority district, then you divide it.
This is so insane to me. But what is so interesting is this. And I love my people because of this. We refuse to sit down and we refuse to shut up.
That's right.
We stand up for what we believe and we are willing to wait 11 hours in line. We are willing to wait in line for a quarter of a mile. We are willing to stand up to the Proud Boys, whoever
That's
they
right.
are. We are willing to let our voices matter. And we are willing. So here's my PSA. Here's my PSA, public service announcement. If you haven't voted yet, get out there and vote.
Absolutely. And the reason now one I just got to say the reason why this becomes so important here because of the browning of America, but also because of Obama's election as president. That's where we get the Shelby County versus Holder vote. And the whole reason is that those areas that were discriminated against, those voting areas, which were Black and brown areas, they said because of Obama's election, we don't need it anymore because, again, 2008, white people voted for Obama. 2000, now come on, let's say it, 12, they weren't, but Black folks came out even in more record numbers and voted for him. So this is to sort of push back that notion of a post-racial America, because what it shows is that we are very racial, and it shows it in the very way in which we have excised people's rights to vote.
And this is 2013, where the Supreme Court struck down Section 4 of the 1965 Voting Act, which essentially meant that now you do need a federal issued photo identification or a signed challenge voter affidavit. And some states chose not to be real strict on this, but there are still 14 states that are really strict on this. So if you federal ID, particularly for people who are indigenous, who live in reservations, who don't have a federal photo ID, they can't.
LGBTQ folk, that's absolutely right. So they find ways in which to always disenfranchise our vote. So that's why I say, if it didn't matter, if our vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try to take it away from us.
Man, oh man, you know what? I need a break. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We'll be right back.
Mr. Chairman, and to the Credentials Committee, my name is Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, and I live at 626 East Lafayette Street, Rooseville, Mississippi, Sunflower County, the home of Senator James O. Eastland and Senator Stinnett. If the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings in America?
We're back. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and you just heard the voice of Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, later Fannie Lou Hamer Townsend. 1917 to 1977 are her years on the planet. And this was August 22nd, 1964, as she presented before the Democratic National Convention Credentials Committee, if I'm not mistaken, as she was running for Senate. I mean, talk to us about this, Irene.
Oh, absolutely. Here. So one of the things I want our listeners to remember this, if they remember nothing else, she gives us this historic quote, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Mm-hmm. And voter suppression is one of those reasons why she's sick and tired of being sick and tired here. So here Fannie Lou is at the Democratic National Convention in 1964, August of 1964. In January of 1963, Hamer had passed the literacy test for the third time. Mm-hmm. And her success, what she was informed by the state of Mississippi that she was a registered voter. Now, one of the things you have to understand here is that Fannie lived on a plantation, mm-hmm. the very plantation she was born on, but because of the emancipation of us, many stayed on to be sharecroppers. So this is a very poor, illiterate woman who passed the literacy test after the third time. That in and of itself is, it's not only a Herculean task, but historic in and of itself. But that, when I hear that tape and I hear the strength of her voice and I hear the lament in her voice, it makes me cry, because what followed is, because she went to register to vote, she got thrown off the plantation. Mm-hmm. She was thrown into jail. She got 3 Black jail inmates to beat her. And then there's that part here that just really bothers me, is that, again, it reminds me that's an epidemic going on with her. And it reminds me of this present moment that we will try to vote, even if it takes our life, and give voice to it. And she definitely did. So in 64, in 64, she gives voice to this. We remember certainly March of 65, right before the Civil Rights Vote Act is passed, Bloody Sunday. Come on now. We've always been giving our life
Yeah.
our life to vote here.
Yeah.
And so 60 and 65, August of that year, Lyndon Van Johnson votes, he ratifies the Voting Right Act. But we got to understand, Fannie Lou Hamer gets beaten just an inch from her death.
Mm-hmm.
John Lewis' skull is
Mm-hmm.
fractured
Mm-hmm.
just an inch from his life again.
Mm-hmm.
We are seeing it even today, when we, like you said, when the president says to his white supremacist boys, the Proud Boys, stand back and stand by, we will still stand up.
We will still stand up. I mean, you said it. And here is Fannie Lou Hamer giving this testimony before the convention, and President Lyndon Baines Johnson decides to have an impromptu press conference to tell the nation about nothing.
That's right.
Just to preempt her so that the public testimony that she's about to give will not be seen by anybody. And guess what happened? All the major news stations replayed the entire testimony that evening, and the world got to see what President Johnson was trying to keep the world
suppress.
We will stand up when it's time to stand up, and not just for Black people, but for all people.
That's right. And you know what I like about that, Emmett, though? You're absolutely right. See, they try to put her in the closet. See, I can use that metaphor. Okay. but you can't, she bust out of that closet. Okay. By virtue of them, that's another form of voter suppression. Yeah. Because if you're in the closet, I know this now. Okay. We want to know why. Okay. So we knew why she had to come out of that closet, and that tape had to be played here. So you know what I say on that one? God writes straight with crooked lines. That's one of those moments.
Look at you. Look at you. I mean, God bless her. I mean, God bless her for what she did.
Yeah.
In order to encourage us and inspire us today in 2020 to also be sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because the one thing that I do know, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, you stand up and you get it done.
And you don't fear death. And, and because she stood up and gave voice, she allowed for that epic gubernatorial race with Stacey Abrams.
Yeah.
Again, another form of voter suppression. Governor Brian, Kemp is the governor and also Secretary of the State, who also counts the ballots, and I love the fact that she didn't concede, but what she did in the face of obvious voter suppression and this Republican grab for power, she started an organization called Fair Fight. And the groundwork and the groundswell that is coming out of that is the reason why Fannie Lou Hamer, John Lewis, all of our folks seen and unseen must not be ignored to make it possible for us to get to the ballot.
Let me pause right now for another public service announcement. If you haven't voted yet, go vote. Now, we're not telling you who to vote for.
That's right.
Go vote. Vote out of respect for yourself. Vote out of respect for those who are looking to you for leadership. Be a leader in this season. Go vote.
That's right. And be the leaders we've been looking for.
Yeah.
Be the leaders we've been looking for.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We can be the change that we're looking for. We can be empowered to stand up and to do what our elders, what our ancestors have done so many times so that we can be where we are right now. Let's make our voice matter by bearing it out, no matter what comes may, letting people know that we matter and our voice needs to be heard.
There you go.
I mean, this Fannie Lou Hamer piece just, what strikes me, Irene, is that this should be a clip that should be held in every U.S. history class, that should be held in every civics class. If we're going to tell the true history of this nation and the true story, let's tell the truth and shame the devil, as those folks used to say.
Right. And you know what bothers me about this here? Because one of the things that we say is that Black women are the DNC, the backbone of the DNC. Now, if indeed we are the backbone of the DNC, then you need to honor Fannie Lou Hamer, and the DNC needs to honor. And so that when they rise up, they need to have a picture of her, okay, to honor the work that we do, the honor the work that we continue to do in terms of trying to have an inclusive, democracy and a participatory government. That's the least they can do, because they will want our backbone and muscle, but they won't want our concern. So it's important that we understand that, yes, our votes matter, but so too our concerns.
Now, what I just heard you say is that the DNC need to give a nod to the sisters.
That's right.
Who've been holding it down for a long time. Did I hear you right?
You got that right.
All right, Mr. and Mrs. DNC, y'all got the message. Here again, Irene dropped it once again. If you're not paying attention and if you're not hearing what's going on, you need to hear this now. She has said, she's spoken. The prophetess has spoken that the DNC, y'all need to give your nod, and not just a pass.
Lip service.
Not flip service. Give your
That's
nod
right.
to the sisters who have been holding it down for so long. Y'all heard it first right here on the All Rev'd Up podcast.
That's right.
It's dropping like it's hot right here. Come on, Madam Prophetess. What else you got for us?
Okay. I got I call it a voting charge, not a benediction. Voting charge for you, this segment here. Now, if you don't like where America is, then let's change it. We give thanks for a country that encourages us to participate in the political process, ensuring us that our lives and our concerns matter. But we stand at a crossroad right now where the existential threat of an inclusive American democracy is not promised. The moral and spiritual challenge before us is that united, we can stand as the United States of America, or divided, we will fall as a petty people. Martin Luther King said there are two types of leaderships. There are those who are thermometers, who measure the temperature in the room, and those who are thermostats, who change the temperature. Let's change this moral and political climate before us by getting our souls to the poll. Let us do what our former civil rights activist and Congressman John Lewis told us to do in keeping the good fight, by getting into good trouble and making sure all Americans have access to the ballot. And in so doing, we will fight until hell freezes over, and then we will fight on the ice, because we know that the power of the people is far greater than the people in power. Ashe.
Ashe.
And amen.
Amen. Right on.
All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Kavontae Smalls.
Music for this episode is brought to you by Reverend Price's son, musical prodigy Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Nina Perzuki, Chelsea Mers, Meredith Nierman, and Zack Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrev'duppod@gmail.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of All Rev'd Up.